Couples who have broken up because of a third person that did not involve cheating. What happened? She never cheated, but it appeared as though she had strong feelings for her best friend. She constantly went above and beyond for this woman. Yet whenever she spoke about her to me, it was never in a positive light. I couldn't understand why she continued to maintain their friendship. Additionally, she would always speak negatively about whoever her friend was dating, which started to feel like a recurring pattern, almost as if she was jealous. I never confronted her or accused her of anything. However, after 6 months, which should have been sooner, it became crystal clear to me that I would never receive the same level of effort or even half of the attention she devoted to her friend. I decided to end the relationship, and it felt liberating to do so. Fast forward to about 4 or 5 months ago, which was 2 years after we ended things, and without any communication between us. I walked into a banh mi shop to place an order. Since it was crowded, I went outside to wait and happened to glance at a table where I noticed her friend sitting. Then I saw a familiar blonde ponytail with their back turned towards me. Not wanting any interaction, even accidentally, I went back into the shop, picked up my sandwich, and took a different route to avoid passing by them. Later that night, while at the pub, I received a private phone call. I ignored it. The person called again a few minutes later, and I ignored it once more. Eventually, I received a voicemail from her friend, warning me to leave my ex alone or else she would involve the police. I was confused by the message but could only laugh it off and continue with my day. Honestly, they are well suited for each other. Story 2. I had a close friend who was always by my side. She went through multiple boyfriends, but I didn't think much of it. It wasn't until I entered a relationship myself that I realized I was the third person causing turmoil in all her relationships. She had feelings for me and dated these guys in an attempt to make me jealous. Despite these guys adoring her, she only wanted me. I remained oblivious until she started becoming jealous of my girlfriend and attempting to break us up. Eventually, I decided to cut ties with her, and in response, she falsely accused me of rape as a "if I can't have him, no one will" moment. It took years to restore my damaged reputation after that incident. I feel remorseful that I unknowingly played a role in breaking the hearts of those other guys. Edit. Thank you all for your support. After 4 years, my name was partially cleared. I never had to go to court because she lacked the courage to lie under oath. It turns out she entered a serious relationship. When her partner tried to end things, she accused him and took him to court. However, he presented numerous videos of her admitting she would lie about it if he left during their arguments. He also had evidence of her domestic violence, including cuts, scratches, and bruises. He was fully prepared and had kept all the evidence. Sadly, despite the overwhelming evidence, the case continued for a while. However, everything changed when he and his mother went to their apartment to retrieve some of his belongings. She physically assaulted him as he left, even hitting him with her car. At that point, the judge dismissed the case and he countersued her. It's unfortunate that it took such extreme circumstances for him to be vindicated, but at least he managed to escape from her and clear his name. To address the questions I've been receiving, we lived in a relatively small town, and I was well known as a responsible partygoer. That's how people knew me, and she tarnished my reputation. I was the guy who could handle his alcohol, but also acted as the responsible figure at parties. I made sure everyone was safe and well behaved. If Ash got too drunk, I ensured she had a room and prevented any unwanted visitors. If someone got injured, I always had a trauma kit on hand to provide assistance. If a fight was about to break out, I would intervene and separate the individuals involved. She was one of the people who got injured. I was 20 years old, and she was 18. She had cut her hand on a broken bottle, and I cleaned and bandaged her wound. We started talking and discovered we had a lot in common, instantly becoming friends. This was 3 years before the dramatic events unfolded. She witnessed me meeting girls at parties, but I never had a girlfriend. I suppose the label of girlfriend triggered something in her, leading to a complete change in her behavior and the animosity between us. No, we never had a romantic relationship. Story 3. When I was a teenager, my girlfriend would constantly talk about her best friend and how amazing he was. It was clear to me that she was genuinely in love with him, but she refused to admit it. Curious about his feelings, I decided to ask him about his thoughts on her, only to discover that he too was in love with my girlfriend. The next day, I approached my girlfriend and ended our relationship, which led to a heated argument. During the confrontation, I revealed that I knew she had feelings for her best friend, but was too afraid to pursue a romantic relationship with him out of fear that he didn't feel the same way and didn't want to ruin their friendship. I also disclosed that he shared the same fear and was also in love with her. Today marks 15 years since that incident, and I am aware that they are still together. I genuinely feel happy for them, and wish them the best. Story 4. My friend's mother, who was in her 40s at the time, visited a psychic who claimed that her children and husband were holding her back. Believing this, she decided to get a divorce and left her kids with their father. Unfortunately, this decision had a negative impact on the entire family. Despite leaving her family, the mother never discovered what it was that she believed was holding her back. Currently, she is living with a random man and working dead-end jobs. The father, on the other hand, fell into a state of depression and turned to alcohol. As a result, he lost his stable job in public government and is currently unemployed. The future looks bleak for a man in his 50s with only a high school education. However, he did remarry a woman who treats his children well. The older daughter, who is my friend, faced homelessness after finishing high school and drifted aimlessly for a while. Eventually, she found a wonderful husband, and together they managed to make ends meet. As for the younger sister, she managed to attend art school but currently works in retail while contemplating her next steps. Story 5. For 3 years, I was involved in a long-distance relationship with the oldest son of a family from southern Italy. It's worth mentioning that I am not Italian, and those familiar with Italian culture can probably anticipate where this story is headed. We initially met in Milan while I was there for work and he was visiting friends. Despite the distance, we made an effort to see each other once a month, alternating between my country and various cities in Italy. As our relationship progressed, he eventually invited me to meet his family and stay at their house. However, it quickly became apparent that his mother was far from pleased with our relationship. To say she wasn't a fan would be an understatement. On the other hand, I got along well with his father, who was a great man. The language barrier posed an additional challenge for me, as I didn't speak Italian fluently. Although I had taken lessons, their accent made it difficult for me to fully understand. Every now and then, his mother would burst into our room, screaming at me in rapid-fire Italian, leaving me feeling completely overwhelmed and unsure of how to respond. She would also hide or take my belongings, making things even more complicated. Knowing that, according to tradition, we would eventually have to take her in later in life due to him being the eldest son, made it somewhat easier for me to accept the end of our relationship. Story 6. When my parents first got married, they lived in my grandparents' house. My father, being the only son with 3 sisters, came from a first-generation immigrant family from southern Italy. While I can't say for certain that my grandparents disliked my non-Italian mother, she definitely faced criticism for not following my grandmother's old wives' tale advice when I was a baby. I vaguely recall something about using rosemary to cure colic by putting it in the baby's butt. Additionally, I discovered that my grandmother would often cook extra food, and my father would frequently go to his parents' house to eat, even when my mother had prepared dinner in their separate apartment. Apparently, my mother even threatened divorce within their first year of marriage. Both of my parents have their own issues, but growing up in an Italian family made me realize that I never wanted to marry another Italian or Italian American. While I appreciate the culture and loved my grandparents, there was a certain level of emotional repression. Everyone was loud and passionate, and anger was easily expressed, but apologies, praise, or any form of emotional openness were rarely heard, not to mention the presence of sexism. My grandmother was not always treated well, but fortunately, my mother refused to tolerate such mistreatment from my father. Having many Italian-American friends myself, I noticed that their mothers often seemed overly involved in their children's lives, lacking interesting lives of their own, and spending their time cooking, cleaning, and gossiping. It's not something I aspire to be a part of. Story 7. I nearly married someone who had an excessively close relationship with his mother. Although I genuinely liked her and enjoyed spending time with her, it seemed that his parents were always involved in our activities. We would tailgate together for every home game, which meant staying at their house for the entire weekend. Our dinner plans were always dictated by his parents' preferences. After my parents sold our lake house, he bought a boat, and we started going to a lake that was equidistant between us and his parents. However, this meant that every weekend of the summer was spent with his parents at the lake. Whenever I found a group of friends to hang out with at the beach, we had to find a new spot, because his mother disapproved of their language and music. Living full-time on the lake had always been my dream, so he bought a plot for us to build a house right on the lake. Unsurprisingly, his parents bought the plot next door and even purchased a boat, which further increased the amount of time we spent with them. Whenever I made decisions about the design of our house or our wedding, he would change them to align with his mother's preferences. This pattern continued endlessly. I had moved away from my own life for him, but making new friends was difficult because we were always with his parents or his friends and their parents. Within a couple of years, everything revolved around him and I completely lost my sense of self. He became increasingly abusive, especially when I was isolated from anything outside of his world. As a result, I developed severe symptoms of complex PTSD, but he blamed me for everything. He even gave me an ultimatum, threatening to break off the engagement if I took anxiety medication because his mother, a teacher, didn't believe in excessive medication. As my anxiety, panic attacks, and agoraphobia worsened, he escalated the verbal and emotional abuse, often comparing me to his mother, who would never let herself go through such things. The abusive aspects of our relationship were far more extensive, and it shocked my family because I had always been known for my resilience in difficult situations. The relationship ended in a traumatic manner, and it took me a while to rediscover myself. He wanted to reconcile, but instead, I chose to move away to escape him. His mother always made excuses for him and protected him, and it was only after distancing myself from them that I realized how much they had taken over my life. He once told me that he didn't even recognize who I had become, and I admitted that I didn't either, but I had become everything he demanded me to be. That day, when I looked at myself in the mirror, I knew I had to escape, although I didn't know how. It surprised him when I stood on my own without breaking down after he left. I think he expected me to beg and plead to get back together, but I had reached my limit. Thank goodness. That relationship lasted 4 years longer than it should have, and I learned a great deal about changing myself to fit someone else's expectations. I also blamed myself for staying and complying with his demands. He caught me at a vulnerable point in my life, and if I had trusted my instincts and given myself more time to recover from a difficult divorce, I wouldn't have gone along with everything or allowed him to be abusive. Since then, it has been a whirlwind, and I have learned never to try to live up to the expectations of a controlling parent. It never works out, and you end up losing your true identity. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel not to miss new cool videos. See you soon.